there, and can you make a warm welcome for Ron Snee? Ron Snee, come on up, buddy, and love you, man. I'm excited. Anytime I get to see Ron a little nervous and going through stuff, it really makes me happy because he is always the wise guy. That's what I was just gonna say. But just so you know the breakdown, I want to break these things down in about 3 different ways. We're going to kind of get to know Ron for those of you that don't know him at all. Then we're going to talk about what he kind of went through. And then we're going to take a small pause. And then we're going to invite our other guests up. And then we're going to get to the rest of their life as they're living it now. And so you should be on. They're going to unmute you unless you say stuff you shouldn't. So then they'll mute you back. Yep, you're on. All right. So with that being said, Ron, tell us a little bit about who you are, what's going on in with before everything else. Who are you? What happened?
Well, I'm Ron.
Hi, Ron.
Married to Catherine for almost 9 years now. Been in this.
Yeah, congratulations. Yeah.
Been in this church mostly since 1982.
Wow.
Normal person. I like to hang with my friends. Hobbies are hanging out at a place up north called Camp Crichton. Shout out. And I'm gonna be 58 years old next Sunday.
Oh, yeah.
Just, I'm an average Joe that am a follower of God. And
What do you do for a living?
drive semi.
Drive semi.
Freight
Oh, yeah.
with that guy over there, Terry Kelly.
So I mean, you said you're just that normal Joe. I mean, there's nothing necessarily
Other than being a child of God.
other than being, well, that's a big thing right there for me. And just so you guys know, this is kind of new. I've never done this before in 20 years of ministry. And so we don't have a specific format other than sharing our testimony and sharing, because I believe that is the message this morning of how the impact changes and how we deal with problems. This is kind of what we're kind of working through. And so before all of this as well, I was just coming on as the lead pastor here just before everything kind of kicked through. I'd been here a couple years, and so really this was kind of my chance also to kind of get to know Ron a little bit more through all of this as well. We actually had quite a few different conversations on different times and things that were going on and stuff like that. But I mean, you're just that normal guy. You've got your wife, you've got kids, you've got fun times you like to go do. How many kids you got? One kid. One. He was more than enough, right? Where's he at? There he is. All right. If we had a spotlight, we would go ahead and spotlight you real quick. He's like, no, that's okay. But okay, so let's kind of get into this a little bit, and we do have a few pictures, but I don't know if we want to show those a little bit later, let you kind of talk about it first, and then, or do you want to show it? Do we want to show it first and just kind of give them a visual?
That's fine, I guess.
We don't know. So, all right. We don't know. Not just him. We don't know. Listen, let's go ahead, guys, and play those first 4 pictures up there, and then we'll pause it right after the picture goes black, but... So this is not something simple. You can see he's got a lot of things going on here. We did not blur that out. I am sorry. Thanks, Yvonne. All right. And So tell us about what we're looking at. What you went in obviously to the hospital, but some things kind of changed. So tell us what happened and what you were going through that led up before this.
Well, before any of it happened, May 19th, 2020 is the first real inkling of something was wrong. Me and my wife is going to a drive-by parade, sitting in a parking lot. I suddenly felt like I was going to pass out. Heart started pounding. I called 911. And ambulance showed up in a couple of minutes, checked me out. Things were okay, but they asked me to go to the hospital. I said, no, that's fine. And then 4 days later, I was up north at Camp Crichton. And woke up in the middle of the night, not being able to breathe. So laid there in a little bit of a panic, trying to calm myself down, catch my breath. Came home. It was Memorial Weekend of 2020, and went to the doctor that Tuesday, and got some tests done. They wanted me to come back on that Thursday, which they ended up calling me in the morning and saying, go to the emergency room. So into the emergency room that morning, and 2 days or a day and a half of testing, and that's where I found out I had a mitral valve that needed repaired. So
now a mitral valve wasn't supposed to be anything too major. If it's messed with the heart, but it's not like
it was a 1% chance of anything going wrong with that surgery.
Right.
But
So okay, so you schedule this, and then you go into the procedure, and then what?
Met with the surgeon. There's just so many things that God lined up, and all of this is just mind blowing to me now that we're over 2.5 years past it. And like I say, the more I look back at it and just really started looking at things, it was mind-boggling to me that the things that God lined up and put in order. But so I went and met with a surgeon that there was, put it this way, I've looked up, there's 34 hospitals that are certified to do open heart surgery in the state of Michigan, and only 5 to 6 of them have what are called ECMO machines, which ECMO machine is basically a life support that's basically for people that don't have basically a chance or are probably going to die, that they put them on there just to keep the heart and the lungs running to see if there'll be a response and a turnaround. But there's only 5 to 6 in this whole state, and I ended up in a hospital that actually had one, which ended up being needed.
Right. So you go into the surgery.
Yep.
You were supposed to wake up how many hours later?
Yeah, it was like a 5 day. They said it was going to be a 5 to 8 hour surgery, on an average 4 to 6.
Okay. And so something happened during that.
Yeah.
And how many days or how long was it, I should say, that you woke up?
4 days later.
So what was supposed to be a 5 to 8 hour surgery left you unconscious and everything for the next 4 days. Mm-hmm. And so then as you come through, and we'll get back to what happened, you come to, and I believe that's kind of what that thumbs up picture was right there.
Thumbs up picture that I don't even remember giving a thumbs up.
You don't remember giving. And so now you're beginning to piece together because you hear something, right? You hear somebody said something about
talking,
4 days.
That's some of the first words I remember hearing, like 4 days, and in my mind I'm thinking, 4 days, what's going on? I'm not, supposed to be out of here in like 5 to 7 days.
Right. So all right, so now you're waking up, you're piecing things together. So what did you find out about what happened from the time that you went in to the time that you woke up? What happened during that time frame?
Surgery went well, actually. The mitral valve repair. And before I got out of the room, something broke loose out of nowhere, kind of a freak accident. went up and got my right coronary system, gave me a heart attack, and flatlined me. So, surgeon, of course, he said sometimes things like this happen. He thought it was just a air bubble or something. So he waited a little bit, put me back on a pump, and we was waiting for like a half hour, and there was no response to the heart. So,
How long?
A half hour.
30 minutes.
Yeah. Back on a pump, waited like 30 minutes, and there was no response. So luckily, there was Dr. Alizwada was still in the hospital.
Now, who is this?
Heart cath specialist.
Heart cath specialist.
Yes.
Okay.
So he was luckily still there. Came in and did a heart cath right on the table, and had to end up putting 2 stents in, and with all that being done, the heart wasn't very happy, so they had to stick me on ECMO.
Now, remind everybody what the ECMO did.
It kept me alive.
Kept you alive.
Kept the heart. Well, it kept the heart and the lungs going to see if there was going to be a response or not. Was I going to basically make it?
Okay, so before we get through this part, I feel like I want to go to one of I want to go to the video or the sound clip. You won't see anything up there, but you'll hear a sound clip. If we can go ahead and press play on that video again, guys, and I want you guys just to hear.
This is the area where I put the tube when I put you on ECMO for a couple of days. That was not part of the original operation.
Right.
It's the stuff that was added
That was
later.
bonus, eh?
Well, I don't know about bonus. I'm not looking at it with any fondness, to be
Yeah,
tell you.
believe me.
That was a twist from heck.
Yeah.
But thank God it's behind us. Because, you
Yeah.
know, many people who went as far as you went did not come back.
Yeah,
So
wow.
we're good. We are good, thank God.
Yes.
Can't complain. Say thank the Lord. So let's see.
Yeah, well, yeah.
How you doing today?
I'm good. I've been out for about 10 years.
Yeah, vacation.
See me, I had some time off. Yeah. So I'm very happy to see that your rhythm came back because when I left, your rhythm was not there. Yeah. So I was suspicious you might need a pacemaker. Clearly, we were gonna wait a few more days.
Yeah.
But thank God, it seems like it kicked back in.
Mm-hmm.
So we're gonna do. I told the ladies to just give you a Plavix, get you up to the floor,
Yeah, I
and
got
see
it.
how things are, and then I'll get your wires out maybe tomorrow, and we'll move on from there. Okay?
All right.
Yeah, there was a crazy thing that happened. I've never seen this one before, and I
Yeah.
hope I never see it again.
Yeah. So basically, I mean, I know when I came in, we were kind of talking and stuff. It's basically, talking about the procedure, it being just that cord snapped or whatever.
Yeah.
So was there something else involved that?
No, it wasn't something else involved, but apparently either a piece of fat or a piece of clot or a piece of valve went up and got lodged into your right coronary system and gave you a big heart attack. So after we came off the pump, everything was looking great, and then you crashed.
Wow.
You had to go back on pump. I thought it was, sometimes we see air bubbles after these operations.
Right.
It's not a big deal. So we see it, So it's like, okay, it must be some air. I waited a little bit, and the heart wasn't budging. Give it 20 minutes, 30 minutes, like Jesus Christ. And usually the 10, 15 minutes, the heart comes right back. Yours didn't. So I called Dr. Alaswad. Thank God he was in the hospital. Came up and he did a cardiac cath right on the table.
Wow.
Because that was my suspicion that thing's blocked. And he found something just like lodged in there. I don't know what it is. Either a small piece of fat or something just went in and blocked the artery. So because we caught it in time, we were safe.
Right.
What he did, he just put a stent, because he tried to clean it out, he couldn't. He put a balloon on it. He said it's very soft, but once the balloon deflates, it goes right back and block the artery. So you have to put a stent to keep it open.
Right.
And then a piece of it flickered out, so he went after that and put a stent there too. So he got 2 stents in that area, and that opened it up beautifully. So once we got that, clearly the heart was sick of us at that point. So I put you on ECMO, left you on the ECMO machine for a couple of days until the heart kicked back in, and I took the ECMO off.
All right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I don't remember waking up, and I think the first I remember hearing anybody talk, I heard some people talking. I thought I heard something like 4 days or something. I'm thinking,
Yeah. What the hell?
how in the world have I
What are
been
you
here for
talking-
4 days? What's going on?
No, it was a few scary moments. I mean, that was completely a freak situation,
Yeah.
total freak situation. But thank God we're here to tell the story. So we're
Yeah.
good. And then I was really afraid because the day I left town, I looked at your rhythm and your rhythm was not there. And I thought maybe the heart attack hurt the rhythm system. But it kicked back in, so we're good.
All right. So any of the all right. So well, with all that being said, then, because I know, I mean, I've talked to a couple different people and they've mentioned, well, possible this, possible that. You're in AFib. It's kind of leveling out. Pacemaker is in. Well, looking like, hey, we could probably get rid of that. So
Yeah.
what's kind of the scoop from here
Your,
on?
your rhythm is good. For my personal satisfaction, I'd like to watch you one more day.
So there's a lot when you hear in this to thank God you live to tell the story. And all of that, I mean, I could already see it's kind of brings all of that back, don't it? Trying to fight through a lot of that because there's a lot of emotions and there's a lot of feelings. There's a lot of things attached to everything that you went through. And how could it not affect thinking and mindsets and all of those things?
Yeah. Yeah, well, like, so listening to some of that, but then, like, there's so, again, yeah, you're right, there's a ton of stuff attached to it. Like, going in the day, that everything went haywire, and then I know there's people that were calling, Kathy, checking in as the day was progressing, like, okay, he's kind of supposed to be getting out of surgery, what's going on? It's the days later, and she's up to the hospital like at 11:30 at night, but like I said, God put so many things in place. I mean, being in the right hospital that had an ECMO machine, Dr. Oswald being...
Now, how many ECMO machines are there? You said 5 maybe in the state?
There was like 5 to 6 hospitals in the entire state that even have ECMOs. Because when I first woke up, like a few days later, and I got the board at the end of the bed, and I seen the word ECMO and I asked one of the ladies that was in the room that in the outreach, I said, what's an ECMO? And then she explained to me what ECMO is, and that there's only a handful of hospitals in the state, and that if you weren't here, we wouldn't be having this conversation. So, but other than that, I mean, there's when the day that I went on ECMO, my ejection fraction, EF they call it, is every time your heart pumps. Every time it pumps out blood, that's your EF is a normal of 55 to 70 is a normal range. So anything under 35 is not good. I was at 65 before I went into surgery. When they threw me on the ECMO and waited, I was at 30 that day. The next day, which is the 25th, I was down to 10, which is just not functioning.
Yeah.
And I know there was people praying like crazy. I went from a 10 to the very next day, 60. Back to basically normal in there. So
Amen.
To me, when I actually had that report read by a nurse friend of mine that was explaining this stuff to me, and she was reading it, and I was like, well, I didn't know what it meant at first, but I'm like, I see 30 to 10, and then jump up to 55, 60, which is normal range. And as she was reading it and told me that, in my head I was pointing, I said, that's answered prayer right there. You ain't changing my mind.
That's right. Exactly.
That's answered prayer.
And I just remember getting, sometimes contrary to popular belief, the pastor is not the first person to find out all this stuff. In our church, which I am so thankful for, we have a great friendships and people that runs in circles that just love each other, and they are already going to town. And by the time I get it, we've already got 100 people praying. And so by the time I get information, I'm like, what is going on? And so I call Kathy, but then Kathy can't talk, and she's got things, and she's trying to go back and forth. And so then I hear about what happened. And so then I'm just waiting like everybody else, and as a pastor, you realize you're not any different than every single person going to the church that cares for your people. Right? I don't have any special power. I just pray to God. I don't have any special abilities other than to love on my people, to pray, and to assemble as many people as we can. And so that's what I started seeing. I couldn't even put him on the prayer request because he had already been put on the prayer request, the prayer chain, and everything was already out there in full motion. And I kind of felt like I was in the passenger seat myself, just kind of waiting for news and stuff that was going on. In just a moment, I want to kind of get to the third part of this, because we've talked about you have been prayed over, you had the right doctors, right, that weren't even supposed to be there. The one heart guy was supposed to be on vacation, right?
Well, my surgeon actually, when I first went and met him, squoze me in.
Yes.
So that was another, like I say,
Right. He wasn't supposed to be there. Then you line up the ECMO, you line up everything that happened, and it was one big miracle.
Yeah.
And part of this whole thing for today is what we're going to talk about is the after. And I think that becomes the biggest part and the most powerful part of a testimony is not just what God does, but what we do with it. Right? There's always two sides of a testimony. What God does and then what we do as response from that. Because let's be honest, there were some tough times after this. There were some really tough times that sometimes we don't look at and we kind of just like, well, just give God praise for what happened. Well, we all know I'm not that type of person that just gloss over, what we've gone through. If there's anything I've learned throughout the last 20 years is that sometimes we have to have some mental health checkups, right? We need to make sure that we go back through and really get healing, not just in our bodies, but spiritually and mentally as we work through things. And those are not always easy, but it becomes a very powerful testimony because one part of that, and I'm going to, before I have Ron put the mic down, I'm going to invite our other guest up here in a second. We're going to kind of close out with both of theirs on that same part. But I will say, as we lead up to this, is that God has a plan for our stories, not just for us to go through them and be like, oh, why did God save me? But why did God help me? But now, what do we do with it, right? Where do we go from here? Because I think this is an opportunity where now we have a church full of people. We're online going out to who knows how many by the time this is shared and given that your story is going to touch and what we can do with life now that we've gone through the struggle, through all of those things. Where some people want to say, well, that's the testimony. No, that's only the part of the testimony. And that's what I want to share this morning is that we're bigger than even some of the major awesome things that we go through. There's still the rest of life to live, right? There's still more life and more people that we touch, more people that we talk to, all of these things. And I've said this 1,000 times, people are more important than the stuff. And Ron went through some stuff. Come on now, right? He went through some stuff. And he's more important than those stuff that he went through. And not only that, God is going to show him and use him to touch other people's lives because of the stuff that he went through. And that's where I believe our testimony continues to catch fire and it becomes to ignite. And so can we give him a round of applause at the moment? If you don't mind, I'm going to actually have you jump down one couch, and I'm going to invite our next guest, Sarah Wiebel, to come on up and come and share her story and give us a little thought. I switched it around just to keep you closer at this point, so I'm not looking around Ron because I know he's going to make some type of face. I just know it. Now, just to give some backstory for Sarah at the moment, she has been fighting some issues. I think the devil's trying to shut her up and not share her story today. And, it's so fun. I'm going to share. Listen, I'm up here. We're going to share it all. She was like, Dad, I don't know if I could do this. Can you share my story? He's like, no, it's your story. I said, that's right. That's her story. But either way, her story's not going anywhere. It's there to share. And, she always has been one of those, at least in my opinion, what I see is always been willing to share if it can help somebody else's life. And she's gone through it. And so before we get into what we're going to talk about, share about who you are for those that don't know who you are, what you do, married, kids, all that fun stuff. Just give us a snapshot of who you are, and we'll go from there.
Hi, I'm Sarah. Wow, that's really loud, Leo. I'm a very loud human, so we do not need that hot of a mic. I am a special education teacher. I have been teaching students with severe cognitive impairments for 12 years now. I am happily married to that wonderful man over there named Wally. Coming up on 6 years this year. Labor Day weekend will be 6 years, and I have a beautiful stepdaughter that I have had since she was 6. Her name's Cheyenne. She is currently marching in the St. Patrick's Day Parade, so she is not here since she's in her high school band. So she is in 9th grade now, and that's me.
That's it.
That's it. I mean,
That's it. She's on the worship team.
oh, I'm on the worship team here. I work several jobs. So I work at a bingo hall. I call bingo with a bunch of old people all day. I love it. So much fun. I coach varsity volleyball, JV basketball, and I coach a competitive cheer team. So pretty much throughout the entire school year, I'm very busy. I'm at work all the time. So my poor husband gets to just take care of it all because I'm working like crazy. But that's me. There's 2 types of horses in life, show horses and work horses. And my dad raised a workhorse, so.
I keep telling everybody I'm somewhere in the middle. I show the workhorses where to go, and then I join it. No, I'm kidding. And I hear you're possibly doing a play this coming year as well. That's what I heard. Isn't that right, Kathy? I heard something about that. That's what, see, we just try to put her on the spot because she is also gifted in several different things throughout the last several years. But it has not made you immune to going through some hardships. And sometimes I think people forget that, is that we have this thought that if you're in church or you're in this and somehow we're more favored than other people, and yet you've gone through quite a few things that have challenged you in your faith, challenged you physically, where you're kind of in, you're out, you're in, you're out. Currently you're going through fatigue right now with headaches and body issues and some things else. So life's not as rosy as you tend to make it sometimes, right? And I think that's important to know, is that when we look at everybody, we're not what you see, right? I mean, the cover doesn't tell what's inside the book all the time. Sometimes they make those covers look really well so that it distracts or makes things seem less harsh. And so, but I want to give Sarah just a moment to kind of share, because it's something that a lot of people in different ways have gone through, especially in this house. We use that big C word, cancer, right? And so I'm going to have Sarah just share a little bit of kind of what she went through and what she's happening. I'm going to ask her some questions in between this, and she's like, what are you going to ask me? I need everything from A to Z. I need every question. I'm like, no, that's not how I operate, because I want to, she'll be like, I don't want no robots here. I want your honest nervousness. I want your real emotion, even if it's, being mad at me. That's okay. I can take it. But can you kind of share a little bit, especially starting from the beginning?
So almost a decade now ago, I went to the female doctor like we're supposed to do every year, and I was sitting in my classroom. My students had just walked out to the bus. I was doing homework. I was in my master's degree program. It was only my second year teaching, and my phone rang, and it said my doctor's office on it. And when I said hello, it was my actual doctor. So when the actual doctor's calling you right away, that instant oh no. And so over the phone, they told me I had an extremely rare form of cancer that was showing up, and they weren't sure how bad it was going to be, but I needed to go get retested in 30 days. So that was a wonderful 30-day wait period, and I went and got retested, and that was when the doctor called me again and told me that I had the most advanced aggressive stage of cervical cancer, so stage 3B, which is basically stage 4 cancer. which is very abnormal. If you go every year as a woman, it's not supposed to happen that way. It was very abnormal for in 30 days for it to go from just kind of precancer to full-blown stage 4 cancer. So I obviously that was very hard to hear. You know, I was 25, wanted nothing more than to be a mom. That was like my big dream, was I wanted to have children. So immediately my mind went to that. But like Ron was saying, God really worked some things out in my favor. Same thing for me. I originally was going to either U of M or Oakwood. That was who my doctor worked through. They were going to do a full hysterectomy and chemo and radiation, which meant obviously I would never be able to have children. And you can't start crying, Mom, because then I'll cry. And that I basically would have a very rough few years ahead. Luckily, where my dad is the city manager, he knew a woman that lives in that city who's on the board at Carmanos. And so God just worked some things out in my favor to get me in at Carmanos. I'm not with just a regular doctor. I'm with the head of oncology. So again, that connection kind of worked out in my favor. And I ended up having an extremely rare surgery. This doctor actually designed a robot to do a surgery, like a groundbreaking surgery. I was only the third woman in the entire country to have had this surgery, where they went in and removed just the cancer, just the cervix. I got to keep all of my other parts to produce a child if I wanted to. That was the goal then. And the amazing thing was, in surgery, they basically, before I went in, said, okay, there's a risk of all these things, but you may lose everything anyways. We're going to cut, test, is how they do cancer surgery. But for me, after the first cut, there was no cancer. So I got to come out.
And that in of itself is an amazing testimony. But it's interesting when you think you've gone through all that you can possibly go through. And you think, man, God is so amazing. You're giving him praise. You're giving him glory. You're thanking God for having parents in the right field and all of the things that work together, that all of a sudden another curveball comes your way. So what happened after this curveball?
So I made it 6 months. So when you have cancer, you have to go get checked every 4 months. I made my first 4-month check fine, and then my second 3-month check, which would have been at 6 months, the cancer came back. And again, it was maybe chemo, maybe radiation, surgery first to kind of go move all of my female parts up under my lungs to try to protect them from the radiation. And so then they had to do a more intense biopsy. And so this was all waiting period of like a month. Obviously, knowing I had had cancer again was a struggle, but I was just holding on to God's promises and praying. And so when they went in for that biopsy, the cancer was gone. And that has happened 5 times. So I have been told I have cancer 5 times. And every time they go in to do a biopsy or they go in to do further imaging, it's gone.
Amen. I wanna come back for a second, because sometimes we kind of gloss over that and we add a number 5, right? It came back 5 times, but you didn't look at them as 5 times. You had to embrace and touch each one separately. Each one wasn't like, okay, not, and then in the back of your mind, okay, is this the last time? Is this what's going on, God? Am I finally going to get this? And let me ask you in this standpoint from going through all of this, because in my mind, this is what I would be thinking. Was I really healed? Did anything really happen? I mean, was there any uncertainty about what was going on in your own life? I mean, were you questioning? I mean, were you mad at God? Were you questioning God? Were you questioning your place, your standing? I mean, kind of, what was kind of going on through this? Because this isn't just something that happens. Whereas you have like Ron's, as far as the actual part of it, right? It was kind of a boom, and then he had to deal with fallout. But yours was a little bit different in the sense where yours was progression. So where was your mind? Where was your heart at in this? I mean, I think it's kind of a fair thing for us to ask. I'm going to ask Ron this as he answers, so I'll let him answer second on this part. But did you get, and listen, I need honesty here, so you don't have to worry about this. God is big enough to take it. But did you get mad at God or angry in any sense? Not that he's not God, but I mean, angry over certain things. I mean, what was going on?
Yeah, I think if I'm being fully transparent, like I questioned God, and to say I was never mad at God in the cursing God sense, but I was angry. Why, if after the first time I didn't doubt you and I gave you glory and I was living my testimony, I was saying my testimony, I was talking about how great God was. I never gave credit to the doctors. I always talked about how God miraculously healed me. Why would you let it happen to me again?
Right.
And again and again. And so I struggled with doubting, was I really healed? When am I really going to be healed? Or just being frustrated with God and why again.
And I imagine it's hard when those things are on loop in your mind, right? You're constantly in the middle of it and you're trying defense mechanisms, right? When we don't want to face something, sometimes we're like, we avoid it, or sometimes we're finding out every last little detail of things that we can do and go from there. And I imagine that's probably some of it, right? I mean, it reminded me of something that Ron and I had talked about, some of this stuff, trying to figure out this, and he had mentioned something. I don't want to steal it all, but he had mentioned something about, well, wouldn't this be a great testimony if God just does this, right? Ron, can you touch on that for a second for that part as well?
Well, of course, when I found out I needed surgery, I was not happy about it, but I had an attitude of, oh, let's just do it and get it done and get it over with and move on. But I was praying beforehand that, okay, I had to go in for another final test for a TEE just so I could see exactly what was going on. And I thought, I'm just going to go to this testing, and I was praying, this, God, you just let them just go, wow, you don't even need surgery. What happened? And I can testify to your goodness, and even to the doctors or whatnot. So I went in for the test, and well, yeah, you need surgery. So I'm like, okay. Then I changed my prayer to, Lord, okay. When I go in for this surgery, instead of it being like a 5 to 8 hour surgery, let this be like a 3-4 hour surgery. Let the doctor be amazed. Go, this was the easiest surgery I've ever did. It was, everything went so smoothly. I can't believe it. And then that didn't happen. So, I mean, if you could say
a quick
worse.
recovery, right? And then it's like, it reminds me of those things, because, in all honesty, how God's ways are not the same as our ways, right? Because in some ways, we'd like to help the testimony along in the way that we think, the way that we want, and yet God has got something so much greater in mind for all of this. And so I want to ask something real quick. Lord, I was just kind of thinking about this. How many, what was it like while going through this? Did God drop different people in your life to come in and inspire you or pray for you or come around you? Were you surprised about some of the things that happened through this? And I'll ask that for both of you guys. I mean,
Obviously, yeah, like my family, first and foremost, obviously, was the biggest kind of supporter for me. I can just remember certain people coming over, like I'll drop one name, like Nikki Ratliff came over the night before my surgery with Margie, and I just remember her speaking in tongues and just praying over me and laying hands on my stomach and just praying that the surgery, and if ever I could say, like, I felt the presence of God and I felt a physical healing, like that moment for me, it was the night before my surgery, like that moment for me, I went into the next day knowing that I was going to have a positive outcome because of that.
Amen.
Well, obviously, this, of course, everybody that was praying for me, friends, were there front and center, offering to help, offering to do things, and which was awesome. I had people I was, walking with, sharing and my struggles.
So part of this, we see that these guys are just normal, right? They have average wife and mom and work, average dad and husband, and there's nothing super extraordinary about position or authority. It's just people having some issues. But one of the things that I wanted to kind of look at was, now that you are, quote unquote, through the amazing hand of God in your life on that particular thing. So now we have Ron, who has gone through, he had the right doctor at the right hospital at the right timing that was able to catch it while he was still basically in surgery, was able to get the rhythm, didn't have to have the heart transplant or the pacemaker, and everything that seemed to just line up, right? That whole part of that. And he gets out of surgery, and now it's recovery time. And recovery was not as you expected either, because now all of a sudden you're facing life, trying to figure out, how do I take care of my wife? How do I take care of my finances? How do I live life? My mind won't shut down. Why do I have my nerves all the way up here? Anxiety, frustrations, not necessarily at God, but just even in life, right? You're exhausted on certain thinking levels. And we look at God did an amazing, awesome thing. And yet, now the fallout, so to speak, from the miracle. Miracles have scars. Miracles don't always look as pretty when you still tell everything that happened afterward. Can we all agree in here that when he shares that first part of God doing this, lining up all of those things, that's a miracle? All the things that lined up. 5 times of cancer and finding the right doctor and the right robot stuff and the right checkup and having the right connections and all of those things, that's God. Those things don't happen on accident. God is working things out for our good, but yet there are still scars that are attached to the miracle. God saved lives. God has made a difference. God is moving, and yet there are some things that God is still working out in you. And so I want to kind of just have you guys kind of share briefly. I mean, you can go as deep as you want. You can be as vulnerable as you want. But I want to I'll have Sarah go first this time, because I made Ron go first the last time. But I'll let Ron go second on that. But what is some of the fallout for this? Because I think, guys, the reason why I wanted to do this whole morning was because of this moment here. And I shared this because I believe sometimes God does amazing things in our life. And then we get to these moments of, where is God now? And God has never left us. He's never forsaken us. He has never once stopped knocking on the door of our heart. But once the miracle of what everybody calls a miracle is done, we forget that every single day is a miracle that God touches our hearts. Nothing is too hard for God. Nothing is impossible for God to touch somebody else's life. And yet, we don't think about every day as a miracle. But yet, we still have to deal with a life after all of those things. And so I just want to kind of ask that. What is life like now dealing with that?
I mean, like you said earlier, there's physical, mental, spiritual. Physically, for me, obviously, I have physical scars from surgeries. I lost the function of my full bladder. They poked a hole in that. I can't have a child now. We've found out because of the cancer and whatever. I have had to shift my dream of motherhood to adoption as opposed to carrying my own child. But spiritually and emotionally, I think I would be lying if I said I was 100% fine. Obviously, I have to still go every year now. I get to go every once a year, which is huge. I don't have to go every 6 months anymore. But that week of waiting for that test result, it's gnarly. It's all of that floods back into my mind. What if I get the call again? What if it's back? So it does rock my faith a little bit. It causes me to definitely have to hold on. It's why I worship the way I do. It's why songs like today, really, if I could have jumped today, I would have. Because I've seen God move mountains, and I know that he'll do it again. And so for me, I have to recognize that I'm doubting and that I'm having a hard time being 100% faithful, and knowing, okay, if they were to call me tomorrow and say the cancer's back, there's a little part of me that would still question why and wonder why, but then I have to remind myself that God's going to do it again, and I'm going to hold on to those promises, and that even if he doesn't, and even if cancer were to be what takes me, that I know where I'm going, and I'm not afraid of leaving this world, and I'm actually looking forward to that and being with God. So it's just learning how to hold on to that faith even when you don't want to sometimes, or when you doubt it sometimes.
Yeah, because whether we like to admit it or not, we have emotions that are tied to memories. Right? It's anytime we think about even a funny moment in our past, and we think about it, all of a sudden, what does it make us do? It makes us smile, right? Or something that happened to our kids and we were scared. You can almost feel those emotions again, right? And those come back. I don't care what anybody says. We don't always live life linear, right? I mean, sometimes things take us back and they flood our emotions. And even as Ron was sitting here, and you could tell as his heart was like remembering all the things he went through. And so, Ron, let me kind of just piggyback for that for you as well. I mean, how is life now, living through some of the scars, and where are you at with some of that?
Well, I mean, just going back to even before I went in, I mean, I've always been not a worry type person. Things didn't, bother me, that type of thing. It was like, whatever, if you're hurt, whatever, you move along. You know what I'm saying? I just never been one of those freak out people. But afterwards, the whole recovery part, I guess, or the questioning or whatever, the process of moving on from here. I mean, I know coming home or whatever, being released from the hospital was like, it was going to be a little bit of time for therapy to go back to work, but I had once I actually started piecing all these things together about, hey, this really happened to me, that I had no idea what happened, and started looking through reports and talking to people, and the reality of what happened kind of hit you, and then that now there's this recovery time, and I mean, I just wanted to get back to normal, go back and do my thing, and it took me quite a long while to realize that, that normal may not be there anymore, so it took an adjustment.
You're in the new normal now.
Yeah, but in that process of trying to figure all this out, I mean, at the beginning, I kept a lot of stuff inside, just thinking about it, trying to figure things out, worrying about getting back to work, worrying about, thinking about what if, I wouldn't have made it,
Right.
what your family's going to do.
That's right.
So, it's coming home, never been on prescription, so you come home with a whole new, say, 12 prescriptions. You got a whole new lifestyle that's kind of kicking you in the teeth.
Yeah.
I was never mad at God, but I was questioning like crazy, just wondering why. I'm fine with it was my thing that I asked. I'm good with it happening, but the whole why, what's the purpose, what's, there's a plan and everything. What can I take from this what am I supposed to be learning? What am I supposed to be sharing? So that took time, but it took a while to get those thoughts processed out where you kept them in your head, and I, through it, formed anxiety, formed, just, I don't know, I had a hard time, shutting the mind off, and, just mentally it was a mess.
Yeah, I mean, life after the miracle is so hard, and yet you guys are living testimony. So one of the things that, because of where I'm at and what I want to see and what I believe God is showing people, is that sometimes life is harder than we want it to be. It doesn't always make sense. And yet, one of the benefits of what happened to you is that everybody in here right now is being touched by the sense that they're not alone. Y'all get that, right? Sometimes we've had some issues like, God, why? What's happening? Is anybody like that in here? Because I know in my life, I'm like, Lord, why do we go through all of this stuff? Knowing that, yes, going back to Scripture, that life is not perfect, that we know that since the fall of man, that there is sin, that people's negative choices have impacted our life, and our bodies are falling apart, and all of these things don't seem to make sense because they're too big for us. Yet God. And so while this is not the capstone of what God's going to do with their life, I was telling Ron, I can't remember if I talked with Sarah about this specifically, but I believe this is going to be something that we can use to impact other people's lives. To go to a point of saying, listen, my story matters. Your story matters. The power of being able to speak about the things that have gone on also lets other people know. Listen, whether we've termed it this way or not, I think it's something that we need to be addressing a little bit more. When we need to make sure we have mental health care. Because when we go through some things, there are people that end their lives because they do not have people surrounding them. These two right here are more than lucky. They are blessed because people surrounded them, because God was in their life, because He worked out some things that they could not see for themselves. They are blessed whether they understand it or not, but doesn't mean they're less human, because they still have to go through, how does my body change back to normal from all of the scripts that I'm on? How do I figure out a new lifestyle when, I had this thought of, God, if we'll do it this way. And now all of a sudden, and even Ron said the same thing. He says, I had this thought, if I could give God blessing for this thing would go easier. A blessing for this, if it would go this way. And Sarah said, I wanted to be a mom. I wanted to go through these things, and now I have to change it. You see, lots of life comes through, and it doesn't always make sense, even when God shows up. But what it does show us is that we are not as weak as we also think we are when we give it to God.
I just think the important thing to it is when you're struggling, when those things are out of your control, that you don't keep them to yourself. You don't bottle them up. You don't.
That's right.
Let your mind constantly run. That you need to reach out. You need to talk to somebody you're close with, because I think just getting that stuff out was therapy. I mean, I know it took probably over a month or so when I got home. That there was, a couple of times I had a slight breakdown.
Yeah.
But then I decided,
It's good. Can we guys give these guys a round of applause and thank you? I know we're getting toward the end here, and we're getting ready to go into a baptism right after that, and so I'm going to ask those guys, they can go ahead and start getting ready. But on my heart, I hope this was okay with you guys today, because I'm not, I've never been one of those that does things normal. I'm not normal. Evidently, the people in my church are not normal either, and so, but I think it's important what Ron was saying, though. You cannot keep these things to yourself. Yeah, sure.
To piggyback off of that, what I was going to say is that you have no idea how your faith impacts somebody in a storm.
Yes.
Which is kind of the same thing. Like Dan and Linda, Joanne Douglas, like your faith has impacted me in my journey. And I wouldn't have received that faith or build my faith up had I not talked about what I was struggling with. Had I not said, I'm struggling, I'm hurting, I'm doubting, I'm questioning. So you don't know how your faith will impact somebody else. So don't be shy to talk about what you're struggling with somebody, because just like you need their faith to build you up, yours may also build them up. So I guess that's my 2 cents in it after that.
No, I think that's fantastic, because moving on those things, I tell people all the time, and it's so funny because everybody thinks as pastor I know everything of what's going on, and they're like, well, you probably know, somebody told you. I'm like, I am not clairvoyant. I do not know the future, and I do not know your inner dialogue. Save the Holy Spirit coming down for a moment. I don't know. So guess what? That means nobody else really knows what you're going through unless you speak up. Now, don't cast your pearls before swine. You don't just go in and throw your stuff out to everybody. But you do need to find people that are willing to hear, that are not just giving you opinion, but they're giving you something that's going to help you move forward. You know, lots of people have an opinion, and you can't just take everybody's opinion. But if I can at all encourage you to find somebody with faith that's not going to say that your life is better off dead, because sometimes we repeat those words in our own heart, our own hearing, and people follow that path. Can I tell you that God created you in his image and in his likeness? He created you for greater. But guess what? We're going to face some challenges in life. And as we face these challenges in life, guess what? Each one of these testimonies, before the scars, would stand alone on its own of what God did in their life. But in my opinion, and I told Ron this, I can't remember if I told Sarah this, but I definitely told Ron this. I believe the greatest miracle is living life after the miracle. Because every single day of your life now becomes another manifestation of the witness of what God did in your life. Every single day now, you're not having a heart attack and you didn't die. So every single day you can hug your wife, you can hug your husbands, you can hug your family. You can now, every single day of your life, be transformational living to the people that are around you that are going through mental health, that are going through challenges, that just need somebody to stand beside them. Regardless of the color of their skin, regardless of their background, regardless of their money, regardless of all of the things that man and society wants to place on them, they now get to be a witness to say, I'm still here. I may have some scars, but I'm still here. I may have a past, but I'm still here. I may have gone through all of hell and back, but I'm still here. That's important to understand, because life is important to still be here. You see, Jesus said, I came to give you life, and life to the full. He didn't come to give you life so you could pass into eternity as a quiet vapor. He came here so that you would burn bright. Everything that you do can be with power and anointing and passion. But if their voices would have been silenced, whose life could they have changed? Whose life could they impacted? Someday, guys, we're going to do this again, and it's going to be one of your stories up here. And you're going to give us a whole different take about how God changed the mundane into the miraculous. At some point, you're going to look and say, I wasn't enough, but God was. I wasn't enough, so he brought people around me. I wasn't enough, but the church stood up. I wasn't enough, but he used even ungodly people in the hospitals and around me to do something miraculous. Because anything by themselves isn't enough. But when God lines up so many things in order, it can only be a testimony of God's hand. I want to encourage you, church. Your testimony matters. The story of your life matters. But my question is, what are you going to do with it? Because I want to encourage not only these two up here, but everybody here, take your story and do something with it. Take your story and do something with it.
I just wanted to say, too, early on when this was all kind of going on and starting, and when would share stuff with people, you know, my spiritual mom, that, you know, reminded me, you know, that you have a testimony. But people were saying that early on, and in my head I was thinking, a testimony? I got anxiety. Oh, I got testimony. But again, as time has passed and I've looked at things, but as I thought about this and even trying to piece all this together and like, okay, there is a testimony here as time goes on, you start looking and putting pieces together and realize the unbelievable things that God set in place and put in line. Could things have happened differently and he just let the heart be done and I didn't need surgery? Sure. But for whatever reason, all these things happen for a reason, but he made sure everything was put in place.
Right.
But out of anything that when I was putting this together, my biggest thing was wanting to show and just remind people that I don't care what you're going through, that, you know, sometimes you get tired of praying for things. Don't stop praying, because God answers prayer, and that in black and white from my reports is one of the first things that popped out, and that I said, I give a testimony. This right here is what I want people to remember: is God answered prayer. And there ain't no you know, denying that this was God answering prayer right here. And then a couple of the scriptures, especially lately, that have really stuck in my head, that really, even during struggles or trying to figure things out, is like in John 16:33. I mean, it talks about, you know, in this life, Jesus saying we'll have tribulations. That's hard times, trials. Yeah. Life isn't a cakewalk, and everybody can testify to that. This life isn't easy. We're going to have troubles.
Yep.
And that's fine, but how you decide to get through those. Do we question? Sometimes, yeah, I question. But I never have not trusted God, where I never lost my faith, or it's not that I didn't trust him. Not even really mad, just the whole questioning thing. And in James it says, count it all joy too as we have trials, because they're going to build us, they're going to move us, you know, into being a better person, or you know, just having that trust in him. And you know, and another one that pops in my head is 2 Corinthians, keeping our thoughts held captive, because if you're not careful and you just start focusing so much on the problems that are in your life instead of maybe the solution, your mind is you won't shut it off, and then that's just an opportunity for the enemy to jump in there and just keep you from where he wants you to be. So just be careful where your mind's at, where your thoughts are at. Mm-hmm. That's just so important.
Yeah, because they're better than I am. When I was going through my struggles and stuff, listen, I wasn't as nice as they are about it with God. They definitely had a better role model than I did growing up, because I'll be honest, I was really mad at God. I mean, how can you go through abuse and my family going through the issues that they did, and what I found out was God was bigger than my irritation and my anger. I'm going to tell you, you're not strong enough, you're not powerful enough to push God away. You get mad, then fine, get mad, embrace it, and take it to God. Because he said that he will answer your prayers, that he'll come to you. Listen, if you're upset about something, come to God, get mad with him. But then take it to him so that he can show you he's bigger than your issues. So I'm willing to admit I'm not perfect. I mean, I'm good looking, but listen, there it is. But in all honesty, though, right? We sometimes think somebody is elevated. Church, one of the things that I have sought to do as pastor of the church is to give a realistic view about my life as a person, as a human being. I don't want somebody to say, well, he's got a pastor to his name, so he must be so much more holy or loves God more than us. Listen, I'm as flawed as anybody can get. And I have to fight some things out with God. When my wife gets on her cycle, sometimes I get frustrated. I need a mental health day. See, they're all like, well, I can't believe he just said that. Listen, I really put this out here for a couple reasons. Number one, if we can't really see that life is tough for every single person, we're going to miss what God really is doing in each person's life. When you hear somebody cussing and swearing and getting angry with God, he's working on them. When you see somebody that is stuck in the middle of surgeries and cancers, when you see people that are stuck in kids that have been left by mom and dad and they're left poor, and when you see the person on the side of the road, God is working in their life. When you see somebody that is full of doubts and tears and they're running from place to place, God is working in their life. Can you be a voice that points them back to an all-sufficient, all-forgiving God? Because he's knocking on their heart. He's knocking on the door of their minds and asking them, come to me, I'll help you out. Or are we still worried about them smoking or drinking and doing all the things they're not supposed to be doing? Listen, you worry about the stuff, I'll worry about the people then. Because Jesus died for people. He didn't die for them to clean themselves up and come to him. He came and died for them. And through his relationship, through them diving in, he'll bring them where they need to be. If you want to worry about the stuff, you're going to get caught up in all the things that don't matter. Let's worry about people and the person that Jesus died for. Because our testimonies are so much greater than you understand. Share your testimony, share your mouth, share your life, change a generation. Can we give them a round of applause? Guys, I appreciate you. I love you. We're going to give you just a second if you want to shake hands, love on these guys for a second even. In about 2 or 3 minutes, we're going to start things back up. We're going to go to baptism. If I can get a couple of our guys.